So what is attacking the X-Mansion, and which universe are these X-Men actually from? Join me as I break down this newest Avengers Doomsday trailer to try and get some answers.
What do they call you? Wheels?
Hey everyone, it's Wills here, and in today's video I thought I'd put my expert X-Men knowledge to good use and piece together some theories about the X-Men in the upcoming Avengers Doomsday movie, their first full MCU debut, along with looking at some of the references and callbacks you might have missed in this newest footage. The trailer opens with a shot of the interior of the Xavier Institute, featuring its familiar wooden hallways and grand staircases with a bit of an upgrade, but clearly there is severe property damage throughout. Smashed statues, the stairs are blown to pieces, the library is burnt. We'll come back to who I think might be behind this attack later on, because first I want to point out the stained glass windows, which is something that really stood out to me when I first saw the trailer. Love the stained glass windows.
That's all I know.
Now, stay with me. Enhancing the frames a little bit, you can tell that these display an X crest and presumably the school's motto. I went and did some digging back through the previous X-Men movies, and nowhere did the mansion ever have this vibrant a colour on the windows. Whilst you might think this is just a superficial detail to notice, you're right. It does also lend to my theory that these X-Men are not from any of the Fox X-Men timelines we've seen before. Kind of. The visuals are accompanied by a monologue from Magneto, portrayed once again by Ian McKellen, who we last saw in the role in X-Men Days of Future Past in 2014. He notes that
Death comes for us all. That's all I know for sure.
Which is correct and funny when you consider that both Cyclops and Professor X, who also star in this trailer, have been killed for good multiple times in previous movies. He continues by saying that
The question isn't, are you prepared to die? The question is, who will you be when you close your eyes?
which feels very much like Eric making his last stand against whatever forces are after them. This feels like the end for them, right? Then we see the famous Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters plaque, which has been a staple of the mansion since the very first movie in 2000, strewn across the floor. After that, we get our first glimpse of Professor X, once again played by Patrick Stewart. We last saw him in the role in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness as a member of the Illuminati on Earth 838. Now, a notable difference between these two variants of Charles is, of course, the wheelchair. The Earth 838 version used the bright yellow hover chair, an iconic image of the 90s era of X-Men, which was designed by the mutant inventor Forge using Shi'ar technology in the comics. However, the version of Xavier we see in this trailer is using the classic electric wheelchair, which featured throughout the Fox movies, and again might play into figuring out where these X-Men are from. Fun fact, my username, OneWheelchairX, is actually inspired by this chair, as the X is in the wheel chair. Makes sense, right? Subsequently, we have a shot of a chessboard with Magneto levitating the Black King piece. Now, this has a few connotations. First of all, as shown throughout the entire franchise, both Charles and Eric are obsessed with chess and play against each other regularly. In X-Men, they play it together in Magneto's plastic prison. In X-Men First Class, they play on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and in the X-Mansion. In X-Men Days of Future Past, they play it on the flight to Paris, and during X-Men Dark Phoenix's final scene, they play in Paris again, but this time at a cafe. It's a lot of chess, and even in this dark and gloomy time, they continue to play it. Secondly, the levitation feels like a callback to the ending of X-Men The Last Stand, where a depowered Magneto is able to move the Black King piece slightly, signifying that his powers hadn't actually gone. And I guess here, it just shows that despite him being older, he is still not powerless and willing to go down with a fight. And finally, the Black King piece itself is significant because A, Eric is a leader, and B, it's the chess pieces he most uses throughout the series, in opposition to Charles, who uses the white pieces the most. There's an obvious symbolism there about good versus evil, but I'm not even going to spell that out for you because I know you can do that yourself. Back to the trailer. In the mansion, we see Eric and Charles grab each other's hands reassuringly as Patrick Stewart comes into full shot wearing a black jacket with the X-Men logo printed on the left side of his chest. To me, this immediately evokes Professor X's green combat attire, which was popularised in X-Men the Animated Series, though actually first appeared in X-Men Volume 2, Issue 2 in 1991. It also has a similar vibe to the outfit he wore in the third volume of Excalibur in the early 2000s, where he embarked on a solo mission amongst the ruins of Genosha. Regardless, this outfit does give more of a war is coming vibe than his usual suit and tie. Then we get our first look at Ian McKellen's Magneto, sporting a red and black outfit which follows the same colour scheme as his movie costumes. No purple, unfortunately. He also has longer hair, which, as I mentioned in my trailer reaction, feels inspired by his style in X-Men 97. Crazy thought here, but I feel like Magneto with longer hair often signals a change in his attitude and approach. Of course, in X-Men 97, Magneto had taken over as leader of the X-Men. In the Age of Apocalypse reality, in 1995, Eric established the X-Men instead of Charles, and he too had long flowing hair. Later on, Joseph, the Magneto clone, who was originally intended to be the real deal, was also a good guy with long hair. And just to add to that, the one time Magneto was bold in the comics, he fell back into his more anti-heroic, villainous ways. So basically, long hair equals good Magneto, which I think is the case here, as he's obviously reunited with the X-Men to stand against a common threat. And I gotta say, this moment alongside Magneto's monologue about dying feels extremely reminiscent of the last time we saw McKellen and Stewart on screen together during the climax of Days of Future Past.
All those years wasted fighting each other, Charles. To have a precious few of them back.
Like the positioning and everything. Shout out to them though, as they are both amazing actors who have incredible chemistry with each other. They don't even need to say a word for us to experience the deep care these two old friends have for each other. Though at 85 and 86 respectively, Disney really took Deadpool's threat literally.
Till you're 90.
And with that, we get to the biggest moment of this teaser trailer. The return of James Marsden's Cyclops, wearing a mostly comics accurate version of his 90s costume as designed by Jim Lee. He rips off his visor and unleashes a powerful optic blast as he falls to his knees. So, first things first, Scott Summers. It's been 12 years since James Marsden last cameoed as Scott in Days of Future Past, and a full 2 decades since he appeared and died in X-Men The Last Stand in 2006. This moment is very cool, and I appreciate the Cyclops renaissance that's been happening the past few years. And it's great to see him unleashed and show just how powerful Cyclops really is. But I also feel like this moment is a callback to his death in the original trilogy, and I fear he might not survive long here either. But at the very least, he's wearing a good outfit. Whilst I don't think it's his best costume ever, I can't lie that this first glimpse has me sold, and it's definitely a better adaptation than Wolverine's in Deadpool and Wolverine. But with that breakdown out of the way, now it's time for the theories. So who is attacking the X-Mansion? Well, in the final moments of the trailer, as Cyclops is blasting away, you can see 2 pairs of legs in the background causing destruction. It's extremely likely that these are Sentinels, the mutant hunting robots who first debuted in X-Men 15 in 1965 and have plagued the X-Men ever since. Notably, they were the main villains of both X-Men Days of Future Past and X-Men 97 Season 1. But they seem to have a more classic, bulky design in comparison to the sleek and fluid design of the Mark X Sentinels and the more human-like design of the Prime Sentinels. These are probably under the control of Dr. Doom, who is obviously the main villain of Avengers Doomsday. And he has previously made his own Sentinel-like robots, referred to as Leviathans, as seen in the X-Men Fantastic Four miniseries. Now, I don't know what motive Von Doom has for attacking the X-Men, but considering Franklin Richards is seemingly important to his plans, I do wonder whether Franklin has any correlation to this. After all, he was the most famous non-X-Men mutant until this was retconned in 2020. We'll just have to see whether the MCU decide to make Franklin a mutant or go the Scarlet Witch Quicksilver route instead. As I mentioned previously, I think this scene does give the vibes of a last hurrah for Cyclops, and considering that this movie and its sequel are inspired by the 2015 Secret Wars event, the odds are not in his favour. See, in Secret Wars issue 4, Cyclops, who was empowered by the Phoenix Force, has his neck snapped by God Emperor Doom. And I just can't imagine the Russo brothers not referencing that in some way. But for that matter, which universe are these X-Men from? My first thought was that this is all happening in the same universe as the one we saw in the Marvels mid-credit scene, but that it's not the revised X-Men movie timeline officially designated Earth 1005 in Deadpool and Wolverine. The design of the sub-basement is identical to its look in the Fox movie. However, there are certain vibrant differences, such as Beast's new look and Binary's costume, that feel so aesthetically different to that universe. Charles's animated series inspired combat suit and Cyclops' comics accurate costume also feel more at peace with this new universe. And I could imagine it's a reality that's essentially X-Men the animated series, but make it live action. Plus, there were no other heroes that we saw in the Fox universe, so Maria's inclusion as the X-Men ally Binary makes little sense if it really was Earth 1005. However, after doing some research and some big thinking, Deadpool and Wolverine really throws a curveball at this theory. And bear with me while I try and explain it. So in the ending to that movie, Deadpool and the alternate version Wolverine, who is not from that movie universe, save the Fox X-Men timeline from being destroyed completely and instead are able to regenerate it back from just 1%. Deadpool also clarifies that this alternate universe Wolverine is the new anchor being of Earth 1005.
Found your new anchor being.
Effectively replacing the OG Wolverine who we see die in Logan, preventing this timeline from going extinct. With this, it could be argued that the regeneration of the timeline has led to a whole host of changes that have perhaps molded it into a more comics accurate timeline. From the costumes to Binary, who did debut in Uncanny X-Men. Hell, I even think this regeneration could be the explanation for why Rebecca Romijn is returning as Mystique in Avengers Doomsday, despite her dying for good in X-Men Dark Phoenix. My main thought behind this is that the existence of the AU Wolverine as the new anchor being has ripple effects throughout the timeline. I mean, he was the one with the bright yellow and blue costume after all. If you're still confused, essentially I think that Earth 1005 or the Fox movie timeline is the same reality that we see Monica stranded in at the end of the Marvels, just after it has been restored and altered at the end of Deadpool and Wolverine. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. It does not, of course, explain the absence of Jean, Storm, Iceman, Rogue, Colossus from any marketing or announcements, but I'm just hoping that they're being kept as surprises in the movie. Frankly, we need to see what happens to Monica, so if it's not this universe, I'll be really surprised. And I think it will just be simpler overall if the X-Men we see in this trailer are from the Fox movie timeline, and thus would make an even better send-off. Third time's the charm. What do you think about these callbacks and references? Who do you think is attacking the X-Men? And what do you think about my theory that the Binary universe is one and the same with the Fox universe? Let me know your own thoughts and theories down below in the comments. Please like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe if you want to see more videos from me about the X-Men outside of the comics. With X-Men 97 Season 2 and Avengers Doomsday coming this year, we'll have a lot to talk about. But with that, I'll see you all in the next video.